Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Concord Pre-Service Live. We are so thrilled you're here. I am joined today by my co-host, Jamie. Missed you last week, Jamie.
Yes, we were in Kansas City visiting family, and actually we were there for a tournament, a soccer tournament.
Okay.
So
the kids,
it was like
the kids have fun?
They had a blast. They were undefeated, but didn't make it to the championships. Figure that one out.
Okay. Well, but they had fun and they're learning
blast.
things.
They're learning a lot. They played hard.
Yes.
They were unscored. Then no one scored on them.
No one scored?
No
Oh,
one
wow.
scored on them.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, let me tell you about my afternoon because I'm really excited about it.
I heard you've got something good going
I've got
on.
something good going. This afternoon between 2 and 3, we're meeting my daughter and son-in-law and the baby.
New grandbaby. Oh, I might be a little envious.
We are going apple picking.
Oh, honey, that is
So-
so cool.
and I get to
lots
take-
of pictures.
Oh,
Please.
look who you're talking to.
Please.
I am taking
share
the
them.
I'm taking the good camera and I'm going to take the first family pictures of my
Oh,
daughter
God
and son.
bless
The first
you.
formal pictures of
That
my
is so
daughter and
cool.
son-in-law and Julian.
Julian. Oh my goodness.
Cutest little guy.
You just can't get enough.
If you see, my heart has shrunk a little bit because he's just stolen part of it.
Oh,
Seriously.
my goodness. They do that to you.
Oh, they do. Kelly said to me recently, she said, "Tim, I think I'm in love."
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
And
how
it
can
wasn't
you
with
not
me,
be?
and I was fine with it.
You know what? That's when you know it's true love, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we have a really important topic this morning.
We do, absolutely.
And it's also about little ones, not
Yes.
quite as small as my Julian, but little ones. We one of the most exciting things we do at Concord each
Yes.
Christmas
Very exciting.
is Operation Christmas Child.
Yes.
And Laura Grote is joining us this morning. She heads it up every year for our church.
every year and does an incredible job.
Yes, she does. Laura, welcome to Concord Pre-Service
Thanks,
Live.
Laura.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
I am so glad you're here. Laura gets so excited about this. She usually works behind the scenes, but I convinced her to come on this morning and share with all of you. So, Laura, for those who may not know exactly all that's going on and aren't familiar with Operation Christmas Child, tell us, what is it?
Operation Christmas Child is an opportunity to give a gift to children around the world, and it shares the love of Jesus Christ with them. The gift includes things like school supplies, toys, and hygiene items.
And how did you get involved in Operation Christmas Child in the first place? And how long have you been doing this?
Yeah, I started about 12 years ago packing with my kids at my mother-in-law's church.
Okay.
And we have done it every year since. We absolutely love it. And then I started doing it here, just helping, and then started leading eventually. So you can kind of start getting involved anywhere, and it's my family and I all just love it.
Well, I know the kids have told me, her children have told me before that they get to pack so many Christmas boxes, and they really get excited about it.
They do.
They do. Well, what about those who have not participated before, who are watching today? How can just a regular person from Concord help out?
Sure. There are several opportunities we have for folks to help out and get involved. One is you can pick up a shoebox at church and take it home, fill it, bring it back. Or you can come to one of our packing parties, or you can bring in individual items for the packing party. Say you pick up extra pencils at the store, or you pick up socks. You can bring those in and we'll pack them for the packing party. And of course you can give money for shipping. The price of shipping the boxes has actually gone up $1 this year. It's now $10 instead of $9. So, and we send hundreds of boxes from our packing parties. So we would love support in that way as well.
Well, This wasn't on the questions, but you'll know the answer to this one. And I think I know the answer to this one. How many boxes did we pack last year at Concord?
Okay, we did just over 1,000 boxes, which is the most we've ever done.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? 1,000 children got exposed to God's love because of what our church did. Isn't that an awesome thing?
Yeah, and I heard back that a bunch of our boxes went to Ukraine,
Oh,
Haiti,
how cool.
and Benin, Africa.
Oh, my goodness. Just
All
think,
over the world.
Our boxes last year went to children because I know I heard of one situation where the boxes were late getting there at Christmas. There was some problem, and they actually got to the children after the war had started, and
Yeah,
it just was.
absolutely.
And God did. Isn't God cool the way He just does so many awesome things?
Yeah.
Okay, getting back to us, where can people pick up the shoe boxes, and then go over a little bit of what people usually put in the shoe boxes?
Sure. Boxes are available here at church. You can pick them up on Sunday or Wednesday evenings. You can also pick them up during office hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. They're in the atrium, just right next to the door.
Yes, in fact, I'm looking at a whole stack of boxes over there, and then we have more in the mission center.
Yes.
So you're not going to have any trouble finding them when you're here. And what does the average person put in the boxes?
Small toys, sometimes often stuffed animals as like a wow gift, and then school supplies like crayons and pencils and pens, erasers, sharpeners, and hygiene items would be like washcloth, hairbrush, toothbrush, that kind of thing.
Okay, and as I remember, can we put liquids in? Liquids can't go in, so
No
you can't
liquids, no
can't send
toothpaste.
shampoo and toothpaste. So
Yeah.
toothbrush is acceptable though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is really important. When are the shoe boxes due back here at church?
Yes, the ones that you pack at home are due back here on November 6th.
November the 6th.
Yep.
So it's coming.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
coming. Now, I have heard of packing parties.
Oh, I think I told you wrong. When
Okay.
are filled shoeboxes due back at church? November 13th.
Okay, the 13th.
So November 6th is when the individual items are due for the packing party.
Okay, so let's be real clear.
Yeah.
November the 6th, we need all the items for the individual packing that we're going to do here at church. November the 13th,
Yeah.
all the boxes are due back here. In fact,
Yeah.
after church that day, we take them. They literally don't stay at our church after that Sunday morning. They literally
They do.
are taken to a distribution center.
We do keep them.
Oh.
We actually send them on the 20th to
Oh, on
another
the 20th. I'm sorry. She's the expert. I'm just the guy who doesn't know what he's talking about, who's talking to the expert. Okay. Well, what are packing parties? Because I know
Yeah.
they're a big part of Operation Christmas Child.
Yeah, they're so much fun. If you haven't checked one out, I encourage you to come check them out. They're here at church. We do them in the atrium. We're doing them this year on November 11th, which is a Friday night from 6 to 8, and Saturday, November 12th in the morning, 10:30 to 12. We come together and so you don't have to bring anything when you come to a packing
Just
party.
yourself.
We just need you. And we have all the stuff that's been donated that we pack in the shoeboxes. We supply the shoeboxes, we supply the stuff when we kind of go assembly line fashion and fill up each of the boxes. So it's a lot of fun. You get to kind of customize a box for a child and pray over it. And then, at the end of the packing party, we have them ready to go.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Now, what items what items do we need most to be able to fill the boxes at the packing party?
Yeah, that changes every year.
Okay.
This year we have very few pins, ponytail holders, and we are in need of like wow items for the oldest age group of boxes. So
Okay,
particularly-
explain what is a wow item.
Yeah, so like particularly boys. Well, in each box, they want you to put something that when the kid opens the box, they'll look at the item and be like, oh my gosh, I love that.
Yes.
And often that's a stuffed animal.
Okay.
And we do have a lot of those this year, but we don't have a lot of wow items for the older boys in the 10 to 14 age group. And so for that, they recommend things like balls.
Like a baseball
Soccer balls or baseballs or footballs or...
Now,
but you could also do like a backpack.
Okay. Will a full-size soccer ball fit in?
It has to be deflated.
It has to be deflated. Okay.
Yeah.
And so they will have the ability to inflate them wherever they go, correct?
We usually send pumps. I have some extra pumps. If people donate balls, I'll add a pump to them.
Okay, so don't worry about the pump. We can cover that. But a soccer ball is a great thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, kids that age absolutely
Yeah.
love things like that.
Yeah. So that would be great.
Now, is there a way for people who have never participated before, and if they don't even have all the things to make up a box, how would someone who doesn't have all the things to make up a box but wants to get involved, how would they join us this year?
Yeah. There are lots of ways. If you have some stuff and you just want to bring it in for the packing party, you're welcome to do it that way. If you would like to make stuff, I have a lot of people who do that. They make like craft kits, they knit hats.
Oh, wow.
They can cut up old T-shirts and make them into jump ropes. So there are things that people can make and do. People can pray. We value your prayers for these kids because these kids share, they get a lesson about Jesus and his love for them, and they go back and they share that with their families and sometimes with their communities. So if you can pray that the kids that are receiving these boxes are just open to that message and that they feel comfortable sharing it with their friends and family, then we can spread the love of Jesus to others.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
It really is. Anything else that the folks at Concord need to know about as we finish up?
Yeah, we do have one change, and it's to something we've been doing for a long time, and OCC has asked this year that people not put your envelope with your money in it in the box.
For the postage?
For the postage. So for money that we donate for shipping, often for years we've been putting it in the box. When you pack your own shoebox at home, they're asking instead that you either you can go online to their website, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, and you can give your money that way, and if you give them your email address, they'll send you an email back saying where your box went.
Oh, that's cool.
And the other thing is, we have all the brochures in the boxes. If you take one home, or we have extras here at church, and they ask that they are postage paid envelopes. So if you still like to stick your check or your cash in there, and just stick it in the mail instead of in the box. So that's another way.
Okay, so they stick it in the mail instead of in the box.
Instead of in the
box.
box.
So in other words, mail it into operation to Samaritan's Purse instead of putting it in the box.
Yeah.
Okay.
And people could also give here at church. If you just give a check to Concord and write OCC on the Ray line, on the memo line, we send all the money to them, and we designate it for Operation Christmas.
Absolutely. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining us.
For having me.
I want to actually end. I shared this story with Laura, and we've got a couple minutes left, so I'm going to share it with you. In my new book that I'm getting ready to come out, I tell the story of a couple. A young lady in the Philippines received a box from a young man in the United States, and she replied with a thank you to him. I don't know how she did that, but anyway, back then it must have been done things differently. But anyway, she later found him online. In the process, she became a believer, her father became a believer, her father then became a pastor, and they started communicating. He went to the Philippines to visit her. They ended up getting married.
Wow.
The point is, you never have a clue how God is going to use one of these boxes, not only to change the life of someone in the Philippines, but maybe someone else as well.
Yeah, that's so precious.
It is. God does cool things through these boxes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank
Laura,
you so
again,
much.
thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
God bless you. We'll join the service that will begin in just a few minutes. Have a really great week. God bless you, everybody.
morning and welcome to Concord. Here are some exciting things happening in the life of our church. The Trunk or Treat is Saturday, October 29th from 2 to 5 p.m. Our Operation Christmas Child kicked off last week, and if you want more information, you can stop by the missions office, or if you need a box, they're located in the atrium. Our Drive campaign has also kicked off. This is our Debt Reduction Increases Vision Expansion Plan. Our baptismal service is happening on October 30th. If you're interested in being baptized, talk to one of our pastors. The Legacy Grandparenting Summit will be happening on October 20th and 21st at Canaan Baptist Church. You can visit our church website to sign up and learn more. I want to encourage you guys to make your way to your seat and take a moment to prepare your hearts and minds for worship this morning.
Good morning. What a beautiful weekend. What a beautiful day to worship the Lord. The scriptures teach us to love the Lord our God with our hearts, all our minds, all our soul, with all our strength, and to love others as we love ourselves. So we'll take a moment before we sing together. Why don't you stand with me and reach across the aisle, share your love and share your joy. Welcome people to the house of the Lord today. Put your hands together with us this morning.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. I will serve the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, and with all my strength. I will serve the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, and with all my strength. With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will serve the Lord with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, and with all my strength.
Let's put our hands together.
Love you, and I will praise you, and I will serve you, and I will trust you. With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. With all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, oh, with all my strength. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, with all my strength. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, and with all my strength. One more time. I will love you, Lord, with all my heart, with all my soul, with all my mind, and with all my strength. Give him love, love you, Lord. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated, at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory.
Sing this with me. Take my life. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from thee. Take my silver and my gold, not of mine would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as I choose. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for thee. Take my will and make it thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own. It shall be thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at your feet. At your feet, its treasures flow. Take myself, and I will be ever only all. Sing it last line. Take myself and I will be ever only
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. If we've not met, my name's Rusty, and I have the privilege of being the senior pastor here at Concord Church, and I want to extend a welcome to you. Thank you for being here today. And I wanted to just take a moment and draw your attention to a campaign that we're in the middle of right now, and that is our giving campaign called our Drive campaign. And the Drive campaign stands for Debt Reduction Increases Vision and Expansion. And over the next 3 years, we want to do all that we can to pay down and possibly retire our debt so that we can do a ministry full throttle here at Concord Church. And we're challenging you in this very moment to consider what you would give to this Drive campaign. A few numbers here to consider as you're doing that. Our current loan is $1.2 million that we owe on this land. This entire project and campus that we have is valued at between $11 and $12 million. And so we've done a great work over the past of paying that down. And as we look forward to celebrating our 70th year of ministry here at Concord Church, we would like to have this diminished greatly or completely wiped out. Currently, you, and with your contributions, you've raised $38,306. I think that's worthy of some applause right there for your work. I think that's great. It's a good start. And so what we're challenged to do, any amount is a payment for our future. So as you're thinking about this, when you pay $1 towards this, you're paying $1 towards our future, to secure our future, that we may be a source of light and goodness and gospel ministry, focused ministry here in our region. And so we're challenging you right now to be thinking about that and planning about that, what you will give over the next 3 years through this campaign. You can do that in several different ways. We have a giving tab that's placed online. There's also a QR code, and I think it's on the screen on our QR code. Is that right, tech guys? Do we have a giving screen or QR code? We don't have a QR code. Maybe next week we'll have a QR code. But if you have a bulletin, there is a way that you can give on your bulletin, your handout that you received, and there is you scan that QR code, and it'll take you to our giving page. You can give an old-fashioned way. We have some envelopes available if you want to drop your giving there in an envelope. We have designated envelopes for that. And if you have questions about that, please reach out to us in the office here during the week. And we want to do all that we can because we believe that long-term debt is not a long-term solution. And so your contribution and your help with this will help us focus our ministries into the future. So will you bow your heads with me? I'm going to ask our ushers to come forward. Ushers, if you'll get in position up front here. And as our ushers are getting in position to receive our offering, we recognize that it's just a privilege to give, that we are partnering with God. Paul, in his letter to the 1 Corinthians, calls us co-laborers with God. With your heads bowed, your eyes closed, I want you to imagine that for just a moment. Your service, your gift, your generosity makes you a co-laborer with the God of the universe. What an important part you play in what God is doing here. Father, thank you for the privilege and the opportunity to be here with your people today. God, we're asking you to take these tithes and offerings and these gifts of generosity, and we're asking you to use it and expand it for the growth of your kingdom. God, we do so not for our own name's sake and for our own popularity. We do this and we serve and we give as a way to bring recognition to who you are, for truly you are the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so, Father, bless this moment today as we give. We pray this in Jesus' name, and all God's people said, amen. Thank you.
You Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after. Sing it again, your goodness. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now, I give you everything. And your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life, and all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am made, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am made, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hallelujah. You may be seated.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we're in a sermon series going through what book of the Bible are we going through? Colossians, right? And what we're trying to do is discover our identity by looking at the scriptures, paying close attention to this book and some of the details that are here. And if you're with us here in the building, good to have you here as a part of this. If you're with us online, thank you for being a part. We consider you a part of our service here today. And a special shout out to our Oikos partners that are going through a pilot program to help take ownership of their discipleship. And we're glad that you're participating in that as well. And I want to begin today by telling your story. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to get your Bibles out and everybody turn to Colossians chapter 3. So go ahead and find that. Colossians chapter 3 is where we're going to be today. And I'm going to be referencing this in just a moment. So I'll put this here, okay? All right, and as you're finding your way there, I'm going to tell you a story. I think I've shared this with you before, but it's a really helpful story to take us where I want us to go today in the sermon. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, my mom was the janitor of Troy First Baptist Church. And on one Saturday morning, it was in the winter, she told me, she says, "Rusty, I'm going to go clean the church, and you're here by yourself at the house." And so I've made a fire in the wood stove. We had a wood burning stove in our house. I've made a fire in the stove, and don't let the fire go out. That's what she told me. She said, do not let the fire go out. And so she left to go clean the church. And so I get my bowl of cereal, and I sit down in front of the TV, and it's Saturday morning, and guess what I'm watching? Okay, so cartoons. So about an hour and a half later, I noticed that the house was beginning to get cold. And I realized that I had let the fire go out inside of the wood stove. So I opened up the stove, and I reached in there, and I felt just a little warmth, but it was pretty much pitch black on the inside of the stove. And I thought, oh no, I've got to get this fire going. I'm going to be in big trouble. Mom's going to be angry at me. It's cold in the house. It's all my fault. And so I go out to the garage where we have a pile of wood out there that we pull from. And so I'm getting some wood together to put in the stove, and I notice there's a milk jug that has about this much gasoline in it. Problem solved, right? This is going to work out. And so I get the wood in there, get it all organized, get it set up, and everything ready. And so I take this wood jug, and let me just say, it's a miracle that I'm alive today. Okay. And so I take this jug and I douse a little bit of gasoline into the wood stove. This wall of flames comes leaping out of the mouth of this stove, goes all the way up to the ceiling. And I looked in my hand, and the jug that I was now holding is now on fire. And so I run across the den, and I swing open the door, and I fling this melting milk jug into the garage underneath my dad's truck that's there inside the garage. And so I run, find a broom, and just knock this milk jug into the yard, and cleaned up everything, concealed all the information, threw it in the garbage, and came home and acted like nothing ever happened when Mom got home. And it became clear to me in that moment that that's not the way you use gasoline, right? Gasoline is not appropriate to start a fire inside of a home or to fuel your home. And today I went and got gas at a gas station, and when I got there at the gas station, there was a sign that looked something like this. Raise your hand if you've noticed these signs at gas stations. Of course we've seen this. And here, there's all these words of warning here. Fire hazard, no smoking, warning, it is unlawful and dangerous to dispense motor fuels into unapproved containers. Only persons of licensed age may operate pump. And so there's all these rules and regulations concerning this material because it's so explosive, it's so dangerous. But also, it either when we interact with gasoline, it goes in one place. I mean, it goes here. This is where you put gasoline. You don't put it in a wood-burning stove, or dangerous things can happen. Or to summarize it this way, when you use something contrary to its designs, you cannot predict the outcome. When you use something contrary to its design, you cannot predict the outcome. This is true when it comes to gasoline. If I use gasoline contrary to the way it's been designed and marketed and used inside of our world, then I'm inviting danger and harm to myself and to my life. And so that's why there are approved containers for gasoline, and there's rules and regulations surrounding the use of gasoline. And this may seem limited or may seem unfair, but that is done for the benefit of our safety. Are you guys tracking with me so far? Everybody with me? The same thing is true with some other human dynamics and experiences that we have. And the two that we're going to talk about today are human anger and human sexuality. And the reason that we're talking about these two issues today is because this is what Paul addresses in his letter to the church at Colossae. And he has some words to say to us about this and how we are to arrange our behavior around these two categories. And he does so for our safety and for our benefit. And it may seem like these are limiting words or limiting our freedom, but really what the scriptures are trying to do in these two categories is offer us the best life possible underneath these freedoms. In the same way that if we're not careful with what we do with gasoline, it can bring harm to us. And the same thing is true with these two issues that you and I may face. And so with that said, I also want to draw your attention to this, as far as Paul's thinking, is that our behavior matters. And this is an important thing for us to remember, especially in a church like ours where we preach the gospel and we preach grace, and we're saved by grace. And I stand here before you today to tell you that I'm saved not because I'm a pastor. I'm saved not because I'm good. I'm not saved because I figured some things out or I studied the Bible. None of that makes me saved. The thing that makes me saved is God's goodness towards me. I'm saved not because I'm good. I'm saved because God is good. And He has saved me, and He's forgiven me of my sins. And we believe that, and it's central to who we are here at Concord Church. But with that said, it is true that we are forgiven by God's grace, and that's what gives us a place in life with God. It is also true that our behavior and what we do with our life matters. As we receive grace and we work and operate in that grace, that our behavior, the way that we treat ourselves and the way that we treat other people around us is a very, very important matter. And I would also say this, it's a very spiritual matter. You may think that spirituality is singing songs, which it is, worship and prayer, studying the Bible, true. But as we're going to see in just a moment, the way that we treat other people is an extremely important heavenly minded matter. And Paul walks the church through these realities, especially these two very explosive things about anger and sexuality, and gives them some words of information that I think are so helpful to us today, and I want to pass them on to you. So with that said, Colossians chapter 3, verse 1, let's get started here. Colossians 3, verse 1, here's what he says. Since then, you have been raised with Christ, so you're seated with Christ. In other words, you're connected to Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. So interesting phrase here. Set your hearts on things above, like where Christ is. Okay, interesting. And then he reiterates this, but in a different way. Say this word with me. So first it's hearts, and now he's talking about the mind, so the heart and mind. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For, this is the reason why, you died. And your life is now hidden with Christ in God. So Paul's explaining here, look, you need to be thinking about Christ and heavenly things, not earthly things. And the reason for that is because in some way that you can't really see and fully understand, but in some way your life is now connected to Christ's life. There is this strong bond between you and Christ in heaven. And you're to arrange your life, live your life according to that bond, that connection, that relationship between you and Christ who has died for you. When Christ, who is your life, appears, so he's coming back, then you also will appear with him in glory. So there's going to be this moment when Christ comes back, and the things that we believe in by faith are going to become sight, they're going to become physical, they're going to be part of this created world. So once again, you've been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, and then set your mind on things above. So our behavior, as we see here, is important, and it's spiritual. And as Paul's already said, set your mind on things above. Set your heart on things above. And in this setting, the mind and heart brought together the will and the direction of the purpose, or of the person. You arranged your life. You made decisions about your life based upon these two things: what you think and what you feel. What I think and what I feel is a large part of who I am. And Paul's saying you need to focus your mind, set your focus on the heavenly things. And when we think about that, we're wondering, Paul, what are you talking about? And it could mean, or somebody might think it means, to think about my existence in heaven, or what songs I'm going to sing in heaven, or what my life in heaven is going to be like once I die. But as we see in just a moment, that is not what Paul has in mind at all. He has some very practical concerns in front of us. Several years ago, my grandfather passed away, and when he died, I had the chance to go through his library. He had like a library of some Bible study books and some other different books and notes. And I was going through one of his notebooks, and he had written a sermon. And I talked to Mom about this when she was alive. I said, Mom, I didn't know that Granddaddy wrote a sermon. And she said, yeah, he sure did. He preached a sermon. It's like a community service. And the pastor asked him to preach and give the message. And he did. And I love the title that he gave his message. Here's the title of his sermon here. It's this: What on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? That's catchy, isn't it? That's pretty good. I really like it. What on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? And I read through the notes of his sermon, and basically what my granddad was saying, he was saying, like, these two worlds, they're connected. Heaven and earth are bound together. These are not separate realities. And we're not just waiting around as Christians to get to heaven. That our behavior now impacts this world and the world in the next. These two worlds are now bound together in some powerful way. And so what we do and the choices that we make have an impact both in this world and the next world to come. And so I ask you what my grandfather asked: what on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? Paul helps answer that in these next few verses. And so here's what he tells us to do. Let's look there at verse 5. Verse 5. Put to death, strong words, therefore, and so he's saying, based upon what I've just said, that your life is connected to God, set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. Okay, based upon all that, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, and then he lists these out: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is, say it with me, which is idolatry. So he pulls out this Old Testament of that. This is idol worship. And you guys don't worship idols like they did in the Old Testament, but you have your own idols. This is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived, but now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices. And so here are the two types of death, or two types of sins we are to put to death. There's sexual sins and sins of anger. Let's take the word death first of all. It's the Greek word nekrao, and it means to make dead or to put to death. It also has the idea of depriving something of its power, to destroy the strength of it. And so putting to death something is to not feed it, is to not to stir it up, is to not to keep it alive. And so Paul says, when it comes to these desires that we have on the inside of us, whether it's of a sexual nature or if it's related to anger, then we have to come to terms with that, and we have to not throw any energy onto it, not throw any vibrancy to it. So what are we to put to death? He uses the phrase sexual immorality. That's how it's translated. The Greek term is the Greek term porneia. And this is an inclusive term that refers to a wide range of sexual behaviors outside the bonds of marriage or celibacy. This is kind of a general term, like a junk drawer term of anything that we're doing with our bodies that breaks the bonds of celibacy inside of our marriage. What would this include? This would include a few things. In our modern day, this would include viewing pornography. This would be a case of sexual immorality. Adultery, this is having sex with someone other than your spouse. Fornication is having sex before your marriage or homosexual relationships. And so this is how the Bible arranged these ideas and how the Bible lists these out. And for many people in the modern world, when the Bible talks about these, it seems like, well, you're just trying to ruin my joy. You're trying to hamper my freedom. This just seems so unfair. But the Bible views human sexuality kind of in this way right here. The Bible says, look, there's something powerful about this, no doubt. There's something that's very dramatic about this, true. But we have to use this in the appropriate way. And the guidelines that the Bible has for these ideas is for your benefit, for your protection, and for your life flourishing. And when you break these rules, or when you're not mindful of this, that it can bring harm to you and harm to the ones you love. In the same way as me dousing some gasoline into a wood-burning stove, it was explosive in a way that I could not predict as a 10 or 11-year-old person. And so the Bible has these guidelines, but these guidelines are here not to limit your joy, but to extend your joy and your happiness in your life. So not only do we have these sins that we must contend with, we must draw out the strength and energy from them, we also have these: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language. Anger. The idea of anger that we see here in the New Testament is similar to our concept of anger that we have here in the English language, is being extremely upset about something. But then he adds this word, rage. And rage, the word picture or the metaphor that's here is that of heat or flame. It's volcanic. So when we see anger and rage put together inside, especially the New Testament, it talks about this motion leaping out of us. And we've all had that moment when the flicker or the flame of anger rises up on the inside of us, and we do something that's destructive, or we say things that we don't mean. That's what he's addressing here, right? Anger and rage. The next one is malice. Malice is going to someone and giving them a dressing down. How many of you ever gotten a dressing down before? You ever gotten a dressing down? I mean, just like, I'm going to tell you my mind. And just tearing into someone, maligning them, putting them in the worst light possible. It's a very super critical, very mean-spirited conversation with someone. This is malice to malign someone. Slander is not going to the person and saying the bad words. Slander is going to someone else and saying the bad words to someone else about someone else, or as we say here in Southern Baptist Life, prayer request. Or gossip. Our intent is that we want them to look bad. I want them to be viewed in the worst possible light. And so I have anger because they failed my expectation. I am so frustrated. I'm now acting upon the anger that's on the inside of me. And now I'm going to go to them and I'm going to dress them down. Or I'm going to go to other people and talk about them and put them in the worst possible light possible. And then filthy language, which is what we would say today, curse words, dirty jokes, rough talk. And all of this is part of the old lifestyle and the old way of thinking. And as we think about this, as we think about these two things, the sins of anger, let me pull this up here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. As we think about these two, sexual sins and sins of anger, think about the hurt you've experienced in your life, the deepest pain you've ever felt, the deepest moment of disappointment. Were these two present? Did someone break a promise to you? Did someone hurt you, or did you hurt someone else? Have you ever lashed out at someone? And it could be that these explosive realities contained within the human heart, when they are not cared for and protected, and when these don't submit to the lordship of Jesus, then harm can come to you and to those around you. And there's one more other thing I want to say about this list, because I know when I put a list like up this, it can be challenging for us to look at. If this is something that you have struggled with, or you have someone in your family that struggles with, here's what I want to say to you. Is while it is true that the Bible calls these unhealthy behaviors, and they're not good for you, not good for your flourishing, for your benefit. I also want you to know that you don't need to live in shame, because God's grace is sufficient for you. That God knows you, He loves you, He knows everything about you, and nothing you can do can change His love stance towards you. And that God's grace is abounding, and it's forever in our benefit and for our goodness and for our flourishing. And so even if this is something that you have struggled with in the past, know that God's grace is there and present for you. And God's grace provides you the right opportunity to grow and move beyond that. And the God that we know and the God that we read about in the Scriptures, He also knows you and loves you deeply. And so the last word is not a word of shame. It's not a word of condemnation. But God calls us to live in His love and His life together. I put it this way in my notes. When you treat people as objects of sexuality or targets for anger, then you're devaluing them as humans. When you treat people, whether people you see online or whether it's people that you're angry and upset with, you treat people just purely as objects of sexuality or targets for anger, then what you're doing is you're devaluing the very human person that they are. And that's why the Bible has so many rules and regulations concerning this. And so He tells us a little bit of detail here about how we are to put these deeds of the flesh to death. Like, how are we to drain the energy from them? How are we to pull the energy from them? He says a phrase here, and I want to unpack it. It's there in verse 10. And have put on the new self. If you're in Christ, there's a new you. The new self, which is, now look at this, which is being renewed. You see? You're a new person. But this new person, guess what? Is being renewed. There's a new you when you're in Christ. You're made new. You're now a child of the King. But this new person is being renewed over and over and over again. The renewal process is never done until we get to heaven. You're always being renewed. You're always growing as Christians. You don't graduate from this. You don't retire from this. You don't age out of this. This is something that we're always confronted with. So put on the new self, which is being renewed. How is it being renewed, Paul? Here's what he says, say this word with me, in knowledge. Knowledge of what? Knowledge in the image of God, its creator. Paul is leading us to think of our lives in relationship to our Creator. And this is something that we don't do a whole lot. We think about our lives in relationship to our popularity with our friends, our connection with our family, our stance inside the community, the way we're viewed at work. Paul says there's something more here I want you to see. You need to think about your relationship and your knowledge in relationship with the Creator. I would view it this way. View yourself as created by God, known by God, loved by God. View yourself. If you're thinking about yourself in relationship to the Creator, you're created by God. You, the body that's sitting there in this chair, the body that's watching with us online, that was created by God. God has given you your DNA, your abilities, your intellectual capacity, your great personality, your positive traits. All of that has been given to you by God. You're created by God. Not only that, God knows you. He knows everything about you. He knows you better than you know you. He knows the conversation that you're having inside of your head right now. He knows the battles that you fight that no one else sees. He knows the weariness that you feel every single day when you've got to get up and you've got to strike out to another day. He knows the battles that you're facing that no one else sees. God sees those battles that you're fighting right now because He created you and He knows you. He knows you better than you know yourself. That's viewing yourself in relationship to your Creator. So He created you, He knows you, and He still loves you. Think about that for just a moment. The Creator of the universe, the one that spoke the cosmos into existence, also planned you. He designed you. The Bible tells us that He fashioned and He formed us in our mother's womb. That's the level of detail that God has for us. God also knows everything about us, every sin that we'll ever commit, every sin that we have committed. None of that has halted His love for you. And when we begin to see ourselves as someone that's created by God, that we are fashioned and formed for a purpose, that we're known by God, that God knows us and knows the battles that we fight that no one else knows, but God knows and He sees and He charts with us those fightings on the inside, and that we're loved by God, that begins to form and shape our identity and who we are as a Christ follower. And then that should also lead us to view others as created by God, known by God, and loved by God. So the next time that you're faced with the battle of lust, you need to look at that other person and think, wait a minute, before I go there, before my mind goes there, before I desire something I shouldn't be desiring, I need to remind myself, oh, this person's known by God. This person's created by God. That God brought this person into existence. This person is not just an object for my desires. This person is something else other than that. They're more than that. They're created by God. They are known by God. And they too are loved by God. And before you strike out into anger and I'm gonna settle the score and I'm gonna get even and I'm gonna fight and you just can't wait. I'm gonna come back at you really strong with my anger and my rage and I'm gonna make you pay the price for what you did. Remind yourself that this person was created by God. They were here on purpose. And maybe their purpose was to teach you patience. Maybe their purpose was this very moment that you're facing right now. They're known by God. Or they're created by God. They're known by God. And they too are loved by God. Finally, as we think about how do we live this out? How do we live this out? Paul gives us what I think is a helpful metaphor. He tells us this, to put on church clothes. Now, when I say the term church clothes, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Just shout it out. What do you say? What do you think? What? Robes. Okay, all right. Someone else? Church clothes. Dress up. Suit and tie. When I think of church clothes, this is what comes to my mind. I know it's not very spiritual. I'm sorry. This is your pastor's brain here, okay? There's a lot going on in this photo. But here's what Paul's doing. Paul's expression to put on or clothe yourself is the phrase that he uses in the passage we're going to look at. Put on or clothe yourself denotes the way we as believers inside the church present ourselves to the watching world. So Paul's going to give us a list of items that we are to put on. And by the way, if you're thinking about church clothes, the Bible has nothing to say about what you should wear in the assembly of saints. It just doesn't address it. Doesn't address it at all. And so that we have freedom to dress how we want to. Someone once asked me, Pastor, do you have a clothing policy that relates to church? And I said, yes, wear some. Do that, okay? Just get there, okay, and we can work with the rest. So the Bible doesn't address, should I wear a suit and tie? Should I wear my best? Should I come relaxed? I mean, it doesn't talk in that category. But what the Bible does address is the way that we present ourselves to other people. That's the kind of clothing we need to be wearing. How does the world view us as we don these values as Christ followers? And he gives us a list. Let's start there in verse 12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved. By the way, the church had flaws and had mess ups and had trouble, but look at this. Paul still calls them holy. Paul still calls them dearly loved. They're loved by God. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Over all these virtues put on, say it with me, put on. It's like a top coat, okay? Put on, this is everything, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. What are you to wear to church as you live out your life for Christ? Compassion. Compassion. Compassion is the idea of entering into someone else's pain and suffering. Compassion says, it's tied to the idea of empathy. Compassion says, I'm entering into your painful world. And this is very important for Christians, and it's certainly for Christians in the West, because if you're wealthy, you can live your life and isolate your life in such a way that you don't have to enter into other people's pain. Did you know that? You can kind of construct a life and kind of construct a reality, and I only shop at these stores, and I only go down these streets, and I kind of live my life in this narrow field, and I only talk with these kind of people. I mean, you can live your life in such a way where you don't come in contact very often with the real pain and suffering of this world. You can kind of construct this fake reality. But what the Bible calls us to do is not to avoid the pain and hurt and the messed up realities of people on this planet. The Bible calls us to have compassion for those people, to intentionally engage in the messiness of people's lives. Compassion. We're to wear, to don, to put on compassion. Kindness. You can't see it there. It's there. Trust me, okay? It's there. It's hidden. But I like this word kindness. And the way the kindness is used inside the New Testament, it talks about appropriate acts of kindness. In other words, when we do our act of goodness, we do it in a way that is beneficial for the person that's receiving it, not for our benefit. Are you with me? Like we give and we help people in a way that's actually helpful to them. Several years ago, when I was pastor at Community Fellowship, we did a campaign to dig a well in Kenya and to help people that had a water shortage there. And so we were putting together some monies to do that. And I had a running buddy that we would sometimes do 5Ks and races with. And he heard about the campaign, and he said, "Hey, Rusty, I want to help out with your fund to go to Kenya." And I was like, "Great." He said, "I've got these used running shoes that I don't use anymore. I could donate them to you, and you could carry them over to Kenya to help them." And I said, "Thanks, but we need money." What we really need is we need people that are sacrificial in their giving. We don't need your old shoes that you don't want to wear anymore. That's the need. And when we evaluate kindness inside of the New Testament, it was on target. It met the need of the person at the particular time. And so this act of kindness that's spoken here is an act that is helpful to the person receiving it. Humility. Humility. Humility is valuing the other person. That's humility. Humility is not devaluing yourself. It's not belittling your strengths and your abilities. You don't need to do that. You don't have to do that. You can be confident in the strengths and abilities that you have. But true humility is when you do that for the other person. You see their strengths, you see their abilities, you listen to their part of the conversation, you listen to what they have to add to the perspective of things. And so humility is recognizing the power of the other person. When we do all this, we need to do it in a certain way with gentleness. The Bible calls us to be gentle, kind, not gruff, not abrasive. That as we approach other people, we do so with a gentle spirit. Patience. Another way this is expressed inside the New Testament is long-suffering, to suffer long, to bear under other people. Here's what I've learned after almost 27 years of ministry, 28 years of ministry. Christian growth takes time. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. People rarely change overnight. People don't mature overnight. People don't become, strong followers with just a few days or a few sermons. It takes a lifetime. The church needs to be a place where there is much patience that's shown to people as they're on their way of following Jesus and living this out inside their life. That requires all of us to be patient with people as they're growing and maturing. And then over all of these, we put love. We're called to love people. Now, as I've expressed before, this word has a particular meaning inside the Greek New Testament. And it's not tied to romantic love at all. It's a completely different word. It's a kind of love that selects an object and pours into that object, or selects a person and pours into that person. It's a love of sturdy dedication for the benefit and the well-being of that other person. And the Bible says, as you're thinking about what to put on in the new person as you're following Jesus Christ, what that looks like. Well, it looks like compassion. Are you entering into other people's pain and suffering? It looks like humility. Are you valuing other people? That this is what we really need to be presenting to the world. Our church clothes that we wear are not that important. But the way that we treat other people, it has huge spiritual significance. What on earth are you doing for heaven's sake? With your heads bowed, your eyes closed, your hearts open, I want to present to you a couple of things to be thinking through this week. If you're with us online, we want you to do the same. Just take a moment, be quiet before the Lord. If you're in the room, do the same. I'm going to invite, if our prayer partners are here, prayer partners, you come forward and get down front so people can come to you and pray if they want to. If you're with us online, there are prayer partners available to you. You may want to reach out to them. Maybe there's something in this message that spoke to you. Maybe you just have a prayer burden that you're carrying right now. You want someone to pray with you and pray for you. Today's a day that you can do that. If you're here in the room, there's people here waiting down front for you. If you're online, there's people that you can talk to online. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Look over that virtue list that we just went over. The one that Paul mentioned. Compassion, humility, patience. This is what we really need to wear as Christ followers. I want you to mark the one that you struggle to demonstrate. What's the one that's the hardest for you? Let God speak to you about that today. And that wherever you are, maybe you've had some failures with some explosive issues inside your life. Maybe you had a failure when it comes to when it comes to sexual issues. Maybe you've had a failure when it comes to you expressing your anger inside of your home or with your loved ones. Today's a day that you can receive God's grace. His grace is sufficient for you. Our Creator, He made you. He knows you. He loves you. May you be renewed in the knowledge, in the image of the Creator. You pray, and if you feel led to, come forward. If you need prayer, we will pray with you. Do the same thing online. We're going to close with a song in just a moment, but let's hear from the Lord today.
to sing your goodness.
Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me.
All my life, can you sing it with us?
With all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am made, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
We gotta sing it one more time, because all my life,
cause all my life you have been faithful. Hallelujah, Lord. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am made, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God.
So, church family, we do believe in the goodness of God, and we want you to experience that as well. As you leave here today, well, thank you for being here, first of all. And then secondly, prayer partners will be waiting back here. If you want to just pray with them before you leave, you're welcome to do that. Maybe you want to kneel at this altar and pray. Please take advantage of that. But thank you so much for being here today, and may you walk and live in the goodness of God this week. Thank you so much. You're dismissed.
Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God all my life. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful. I thank you, Lord, you have been faithful. All my life you have been so,